What's up? Handle is Spielberg, and this is my very first video where I'm going to be talking to you today about being an ex-Amazon associate manager for 4 years and becoming a six-figure Fulfilled by Amazon FBA seller on Amazon Marketplace. So it has been a very long journey, and I have an inside perspective that's a little bit unique from a lot of other people because I used to be in operation on the ground level, boots on the ground. I did a lot at Amazon. I know all the metrics. I know everything from the inside. I know how logistics works. I know how the warehouses work. I know how I could go in and I could run an operation right now today. But unfortunately, that was not the path that I wanted to take. I think it's a young man's game. At the end of the day, you have to have an exit strategy, an exit plan. And so I had started my own business around 2017. I started as a marketing company. And from there, I kept the dream alive, basically. And I've pivoted into a lot of different things. I wouldn't even call it pivoting, crescendo, whatever you want to call it. Started off with marketing, building websites, things like that. Taught myself a lot of skills. And I had always been a seller. So I've always, 20 years, I've been selling things, going all the way back to Craigslist. When my parents split up, when my mom and stepdad split up, I pretty much sold half of our furniture and half of the house on Craigslist when I was 14 years old. So I've been doing it a really long time. And I started essentially a Amazon Marketplace account trying to sell t-shirts, I want to say 7 years ago. And I was just sitting on the account, and about 2 years ago, I started getting serious about it, really trying to sell some things. And so I was doing a lot. So when I first started, and the thing that really sparked it for me was I was going to bin stores. So if you guys have heard of essentially a bin store is a store that they sell from a lot of different retailers. It could be from any retailer technically, but they buy pallets. So the way it works on the inside at Amazon is you have a department called VRETs. The department stands for vendor returns. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening on the inside at a fulfillment center. So as a lot of people don't know, 60% of Amazon's business actually comes from sellers that are just on the marketplace. So the sellers that are on the Amazon Marketplace, they've got two options. They can take their items and list them on Amazon, and they can do what's called FBA, which is Fulfilled by Amazon. And essentially they take those items, they label them, essentially creating Amazon barcodes, and they can sticker them themselves, or they can pay an extra fee and Amazon will sticker it for them. But essentially they take those items, prepare them, and then they send the entire bulk shipment to Amazon, and then Amazon has to receive them in their inbound department. They take those items, essentially once they've been received into the system, then they have to stow them, and they're still their inbound department. After they stow those items, then obviously you got to wait till a customer purchases them. It's going to show up as Prime because the item is being handled directly by Amazon at one of their fulfillment centers by one of their associates. Once that order comes through, then you have a person that picks it. You have another person that touches it in the packing department. Once they drop it off, they pack the item. Then you have another person that touches it in the shipping department, which is the last stop. And then essentially they take that item, they put it on the truck. There's a little bit more to it than that. Sometimes it'll go to a sortation center, and then they split it up even more to get it closer to the customer. or to marry up if someone has multiple items, etc., or to send it to the post office, have post office deliver. There's a lot of different things. There's a lot of touches there. As you can see, a lot of touches at Amazon. So that's one of the things that I knew going into this is you got to pay for all those touches. You got to pay for all those Amazon associates and all those benefits and everything like that. So the advantage of that is once you get it there, you don't have to touch it anymore. It's already done. It's there. But at the same time, that advantage is also the people, when they purchase it, they see that Prime box on there. And so it feels more legit to some people. They see that Prime box. They see it's going to be 2-day shipping. I'm going to get it directly from Prime. They think it's Amazon's item. Sometimes Amazon purchases a lot of name brand items. Sometimes they do it under their own brand. You got the Amazon Essentials, stuff like that. But anyway, so that's how it works inside of the fulfillment center. But here's the thing. You have a lot of people that are listing those items and they're doing FBA because they don't want to touch it. They don't want to deal with shipping. They don't want to do all that extra legwork, right? They're willing to pay that extra cost. Well, it costs around, I think it's $200 a month or something like that for the FBA. You got to pay those extra fees to keep that moving, essentially for them to do all that extra work for you, to keep it on their shelf. It's warehouse space. It's in their operation. So you're paying all those extra fees for that. Sometimes you might get an item that you took a chance on. A lot of times people are trying to drop ship. That's a word that you always hear. I hate that word. I don't like it. Don't call me a drop shipper because I'm not a drop shipper. What I'm doing is a lot more complex than that. But anyway, people make a purchase on Alibaba. They purchase something from China and they're selling it on Amazon as a generic item. So what happens is if you have phone cases, now this is what I dealt with personally. With phone cases, I had a phone case, nice phone case. That same exact item I found on Amazon was selling for about $10 to $20, something like that, right? My item, I branded it. So I had to brand the item, had to build a little website for it, and they didn't sell. None of them sold. So they sat for a long time. I might have sold 2 or 3, but I had to drop the price to the point where I was losing money. It was dumb. It just wasn't efficient. So I got the squeeze. So after a couple months, Amazon's like, cool, look, we'll keep your stuff. We'll keep it on our shelf, but you got to keep paying us every month to keep it on the shelf. So eventually these little sellers, they feel that squeeze where it's like, look, I'm not making any money off of this item. So eventually I'm going to have to pull it from the shelf. I'm going to have to just say, man, give it back. I'm going to cut my losses, right? Well, unfortunately, Amazon does something else that is part of their business model. And it's great because it helps with fulfillment. It helps with that customer promise. They take those cell phone cases that you sent them, right? And I already told you there's a lot of people that have touched it. Well, they take one extra touch where that package, that box of phone cases, they start shipping it to other Amazon fulfillment centers. It's called transshipment. So they might send it to about 15 different warehouses all across the nation, right? Because they want to be as close to the customer as possible for when they make that purchase, right? So they can hit that promise. Well, unfortunately, when you want to get that item back, right, it's going to come in about 15 different boxes, right? It's going to come from about 15 different places. Those things are going to be trickling back in. So basically what I'm getting at is it's a matter of inventory availability. It's a matter of timing, because now you've lost all this money, right? And now the VRETS team, vendor returns, they've got to get every single one of those items. They've got to pick them, and then they got to ship them back to you, or sometimes it just goes to liquidation. I don't know what happens. I don't know if the seller just decides to cut their losses with it. I don't know if they're not paying their Amazon fees and they just said, forget it. They just stopped paying it. I don't know what happens, but essentially these items, defective, a lot of different things, returns, they end up on these pallets. And so Amazon's got pallets upon pallets of vendor returns, and those pallets, they sell them to liquidators. Essentially, they sell it by the pound. So they sell it to these third-party companies. And that's how your items those pallets end up with these third-party companies. Then another company, with the introduction of these bin stores that have been popping up over the last 5 to 10 years, now really since 2020, these stores have been popping up where essentially you go in, they purchase the multiple pallets, they put them inside these big bins, and they dump it all out in the bin. And then they might say, hey, today's $5 day, or $10 day. All of their good stuff they put inside the bins that day, right? And you pay $5 per item, and then they make their money. Or it goes down to $1, and then it's like a bunch of junk. But you can pull some good items. So that's where I started, was, hey, I'm gonna go to these bin stores, and you can get some good pulls at those bin stores now. So if you go in there, some of the bin stores, they have items that they might do a fill a bag day. So you get an entire IKEA bag and you can fill it up. So it's like at the end of the week, after they've sold through everything, all the good stuff, and then everything that's fell to the bottom, that's what they're just trying to get rid of. So I started going in, I started filling up those IKEA bags, killing them. I'm talking like walk out with 100 pounds worth of stuff. But you have to remember, those items at those bin stores, a lot of times they're from Amazon. And you can tell that they're Amazon items because they've got the label, they've got an ASN on them, and you can look them up and you can find them. A lot of times that item is still active on Amazon. So essentially I started flipping items from those bin stores, put it right back on Amazon and selling those. But it's a lot of work, because a lot of times you might have a lot of one item. Maybe I got 10 of the same phone case, but it's a lot of work to go in, find each one of those items, make sure the item's not gated, which is something I'll talk about. But basically Amazon doesn't let you just sell whatever you want. But that's how I got started. That's how I started moving some product, moving some freight. And then from there, once I started moving, I started selling cell phone cases. So I started selling cell phone cases. I would go into the bin stores. That was the one thing that you could get a lot of. So I had one person who owned a bin store up in Florida, about an hour from me. She sold me a whole pallet of phone cases. And then I found a couple flea markets around me where they had cell phone stores. One lady, she owned 2 or 3 stores in the flea market. So I would take the whole pallet, bundle them together, all the iPhone cases, all the premium ones. You have a lot of them that are trash, and then just selling those. But one day I was talking, I pulled up and I purchased some phone cases from her, and she was like, hey, what are you doing with all these? And I was like, I'm selling on Amazon. And she was like, well, that's how I got started. She's like, but did you know that tools and books are not gated on Amazon? Normally, those are 2 categories that Amazon doesn't really gate. And I was like, interesting. So I started doing some research, and she sold me a pallet of books, and I listed those, started moving those a little bit, just getting my feet wet, getting some orders through, getting used to the process, getting used to the timing, getting used to delivering everything, building up my account, getting some reviews. You got to put in that groundwork. You got to put in that time in order for your account and for it to flow, and for you to build that reputation, and for Amazon to start opening up some of those doors for you to be able to sell more things. So essentially I started selling some tools. I started looking for tools that I could sell. And so then I started doing some retail arbitrage. So I did retail arbitrage with Ego tools. Ego is one of the best brands out there. So what I was doing is I would go to Lowe's, and essentially I was purchasing a trimmer, and they would have the deal where you purchase the trimmer and you get a free battery. So you're really not making too much money off of the trimmer at all. You're pretty much breaking even on the trimmer, or maybe losing a little bit, but then you get the free battery, which you could sell for $150, $200 potentially, depending on which one it is. And so then that's your profit, is the battery. So you have to sell the trimmer to get the battery to get the profit. But anyway, you can make $100 or something off of the battery. So I had sold maybe 50 of the trimmers. And sometimes at first, you feel like you're not making a lot of money, but at the same time, it's a matter of how can you build it up? How can you get that flow? So from there, I said, look, I've got numbers now. I went into a tool distributor and I said, look, man, I've sold 50 of these 50 of these trimmers. I've got some proof of sales, and can I start selling some of your stuff? And then as soon as I started that, and I can get into that a little bit later, but once I broke open that door, selling the ego is what opened the door, is what ungated me to be able to sell the big dog stuff. And once I got that, then that's when I really started moving some work. That's when I really started moving some product. So that's kind of how I got started. There's a lot of different ways to get yourself ungated. Some people, they might go my route. I don't think a lot of people will. There's another way that you can do it. A lot of other people that I've researched on here talk about is essentially you can go to a place like Acme Tools and you can purchase. Amazon is very particular. They want to see an invoice for obvious reasons. They want to make sure your stuff is legit. They want to make sure that you have permission to be able to sell those items. So you go to a place like Acme Tools and you want to get yourself ungated for DeWalt. So you go to Acme Tools, you have to purchase 10 of one item, at least 10 they need to see on the invoice. So you purchase 10 of a drill. So the drill, say it's $200 drill. You buy 10 of them, $2,000. So you go ahead and you purchase that. And then obviously you have to have a paid invoice. You take that paid invoice when you go to list it on Amazon. And because they're gonna ask you, once you try to list it, they're gonna ask you to fill out a seller application because you're not automatically ungated yet. So then you do the application. Once you get that application approved, showing that you have that invoice. And the reason why I said $200 as a price point for each drill is, and you have to have 10. So the minimum is 10 of the quantity of the SKU. And then they want to see an invoice for $1,000 to $2,000. A lot of things with Amazon, they're not 100% grounded. It's a mystery of if they're going to approve you or not, is what I'm saying. So you essentially, it's preferred that you have $2,000 for that first invoice, but they want to see, from what I've read, people that have the $2,000, once they hit that $2,000 mark, you're more likely to get approved than $1,000. They want to see you really have the skin in the game. So you get to that $2,000 mark, you sell those items, they approve it obviously, you sell those items, and now you've got yourself ungated. So now that you're ungated, you can start selling more DeWalt. So that's how you can push the door open to be able to sell certain things. So you have the two options. It's basically you play the ground game and you grind through it because you don't have the money up front to just buy $2,000 worth of a certain item, and you want to build it up slow, or you got a little bit of money and you can invest in some inventory and you get yourself ungated for a specific category or a specific item within a category, a specific name brand. But it's not a perfect science. You could be approved to be able to sell DeWalt, just that drill and nothing else. So it's a grind. You have to keep going. It's not just you're done here. You have to keep going. You have to keep proving, and you have to keep pushing those doors open. Sometimes you're not going to be in the profit for a while until you can really get yourself established. But then once you have those numbers, you have to be able to talk. You got to, because if you're doing retail arbitrage, you're starting off just as a small person, you got to be able to prove yourself. I can go negotiate, hey, and I've done this, I'm going to purchase $5,000 worth of these items here. Can I get a discount? Versus you just go in there, hey, I just want to start selling on Amazon. I just want to start selling. Can you give me a little discount? It's a different conversation. So you got to put that work in. The benefit, obviously, of getting on that distributor level is you can let your places of purchase, you let them be the ones that hold your inventory for you. The name of the game is to hold the least amount of inventory possible. That's how you stay lean. That's how you limit all that extra overhead, in my opinion. There's other options. I think the other way to do it is you just straight up, you've got some branded products that are yours. You've got a certain niche. But if you just want to get in, people are like, where do I start? Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I wouldn't go to Alibaba and just purchase $2,000 worth of some BS, because I promise you're going to be sitting on that for a very long time. So the name of the game when you're first starting, and the hardest part is finding that first product. So you got to look into a category. You have to look into whichever products are moving the fastest. Some of that data is going to come from a little bit of sweat equity, right? Some of that data you can find, but that's how I got started. And I'm looking forward to sharing some more information. I've got a lot more things. I'm going to talk a little bit about seasonality and timing. I'm going to talk about availability of your inventory, outlets to be able to sell your inventory, because remember, you have to be multifaceted. You can't just sell it at one place. You got to sell it off of eBay, sell it on Facebook Marketplace, have a strategy for your returns, because you will have some items that get returned and they come back to you. And you have to have a strategy to be able to burn those items quickly so that you minimize the amount of cost and overhead that those items sitting in your garage or your storage locker are going to have. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's also about liquidity. And I'm going to talk about that too. Liquidity, having the money to be able to purchase more. Talk about Prime Day. Talk about how during November to January 1st, how crazy it gets if you're moving some items, if you're moving some big time. Sometimes people have to tap out because they run out of money. Their credit cards, purchasing items, and their orders are coming in faster than Amazon is paying them back, because it's a 2-week process, right? So sometimes your inventory, sometimes your leverage that you have ends up redlining and you have to tap out. But during that time of the year, you don't want to tap out, because you might do a third of your sales for the entire year over a month-long period. So being able to handle the volatility during those times, partners to be able to help you ship your items so that you don't have to ship them yourself, that was a big time. That's when I really started making some big profits. To think like an operator, talk a little bit about AI as a decision maker. Not everyone is technical. Everyone's going to be able to build some crazy dashboards and things like that, but using AI to be a decision maker, to help business, to make business decisions, to be able to track spreadsheets, your profitability. Every decision that you make has to be based on profitability. You never want to run out of money. You don't want to be in debt. You don't want to be in the hole. How to get out of the hole, how to get out of Amazon jail. Okay, you make a mistake because you're brand new to the game and you didn't know what you didn't know. Talk about building relationships, your shipping partners, like the store that you go to, whether it's the UPS store, things like that, how to choose the right carrier, supplies to be able to sell your items as cheap as possible, because that's expense. A lot to talk about. So I'm going to talk about these things because got a lot of people that ask me a lot of questions all the time because they see what I'm doing, and they also see that this is a pure side hustle. Also a teacher and a football coach. And so I'm doing all of these things with Amazon just on the side. I finally got to the point where I'm making more money with Amazon than I am making teaching and coaching. Long-term strategy, being able to do these things is going to allow you to experience some financial freedom, to be able to pay off debt. And if you're willing to put in the work, you're willing to hustle. A lot of people see that and they start to ask a lot of questions. There's a lot of different people out here telling their stories. I think I'm a little bit different because I did work at Amazon for 4 years. Like I said, I am a hustler. I am a teacher. I feel like I can present it in a different way. The way that I do it is different than a lot of other people do it. And I know a lot of little tricks. So anyway, that's my plan. Start this little and just gonna keep grinding, keep being great. Thank you, Spielberg. Out.